Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Speaking of Patreons, I'm going to do a shout out to all of you. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Austin Whitsitt, John Kays, DL Hill, Julian Jeremiah, Tommy Swagnuts, Michael Kahn, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Mel B. Styles, Troy Shuker, Bose Nail, Samson, Maris, Hairy Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, Unbelievable Productions, Maria Neelands, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Liam Nedrick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Naibai, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, Fireball X, TheFlatEarthChannel.com, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their conversation while I set up for today's live show.
Like, in a sense, to a model, you could say loosely, right? Like, they all have a usual idea of what their Earth looks like, right?
What? What are you asking exactly? Sorry. You realise I've just got here, right?
You just got here. Okay. It's a bit. Maybe it needs a bit more morning warm up. I was just gonna say, people and how they kind of view the Earth, right? Like on our side. Like, yes, we know it's like level and all that.
Not really. Just give me
But
a vague introduction to what you're trying to get across to me, because I've not got any coffee
the AE,
yet. I don't know what you mean.
The AE map.
AE map, as in azimuthal equidistant globe projection. Okay.
Yes, a lot of people view the Earth like that, right?
Okay, so do you want me to say a lot of people have the same reification fallacy transferred from a globe model onto an azimuthal equidistant projection model? Is that what you're trying to get me to say?
Well, I don't know. I'm just not really pushing you in any direction. I'm just kind of curious what you're going to say.
I don't live on a model.
But you're right. They are like superimposing something as their reality. Now, I'm not necessarily focusing on reification and stuff like that. I'm just focusing on, like, well, what standard did they use to get there? Right?
Like
a lot of people.
They being who? The people who made the maps, or the people that you're talking about that reify the maps into something that they're not necessarily?
Well, just people on our side. Like, a lot of people on our side see the world like that. And like, in a sense, like a loose sense, like generally it's like a pizza shape, right? Right?
I'm really struggling to track along, right? 10th man, hello, first of all.
Hey,
Good morning.
Are you
Sorry, I was just going to say, we don't know.
I'm not tracking with where you want me to go, so am I okay to hand over to Righteous, get some coffee in me, and then follow along a bit better?
I'll talk with Neil. Neil said he doesn't know. I'll go with that.
Get your coffee. They don't know. Nobody knows what the nature of our Earth is. Nobody.
Right. Let's roll with that. Nobody knows, yet they still hold closely the AE map.
It's just an example, and I think it's a pretty good example. But that's all it is, just an example. So it's good to have an example to show someone, give them an idea of what it might look like. But obviously, nothing's 100% proof because we haven't map the whole entire world. But it's a good reference to look at. That's about it. When you compare
Totally
it against
disagree.
the globe.
Neil, you disagree?
Totally. Don't know
Well,
what it
go
is.
on.
That's
Just
what we're
give us
doing.
a-
We're
Go on,
investigating.
Neil. Tell me more, please. I'm waiting.
Well, how could he tell you more if he doesn't know what it is?
Yeah, I don't use anything. I don't ascribe to. Hold on.
He doesn't know. That's it. End
Hold
of
on.
discussion.
I don't ascribe to anything. Because once you
Well, then
hold
that's
up,
perfect. Then that's fine.
hold
Then
on.
you can-
Once you hold up a map, you're holding something up for them to burn and attack you. No, thank you.
No,
I'm
but
fine
you,
with
you
saying
don't-
I don't know what it
Go on.
is.
Hold on a sec. Let me talk with Neil. So you're just taking it from a perspective of like having a good foothold in this arena. But otherwise, if it wasn't for this foothold, would you ascribe to it?
Of course he would, because he needs to.
Wait a second. You're not,
No, I
guy.
never
You're not
would.
Neil.
What do you?
Calm down,
What
guy.
do you mean, flat Earth? Are you talking about the flat Earth debate show that I'm on, or are you talking about? I don't understand your question.
All right. In terms of debating, yes, it's good to not ascribe to a model, right? But outside of the debate, putting the debate aside, okay, you're not engaging anybody, just your personal idea, okay? Like, do you think it could be the AE map?
Nope.
Look, why can't you just accept his answer that it's just flat, but he doesn't know what the shape of it is, other than that?
I can accept that. That's fine. I was just making sure kind of thing, right? Refining, just basically asking him more questions just to be more sure of what he's saying.
Right, but if he knew, he'd say, one thing we do know is that it's flat. It's not.
Right.
We can disprove the globe because there's no R. We can prove it's
Right.
flat because that's very easy to do with celestial navigation and the properties of water. Water doesn't curve.
Right.
So we know it's flat.
Right. Right. Now,
That's it.
interesting you brought celestial. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I just wanted
I
to
mean, if
make.
I remember seeing a documentary on the highest you can go up in the sky and how much of the Earth can you actually see. And it was really done well. I'm trying to remember the parameters, but let me just give you an example of what they were showing. It's like you're going into a tunnel where you had to duck down and say you had to walk a distance until the tunnel ended. But you had to duck down because that's the perspective you would have, because you could never get high enough to see everything. So it was almost like those old cars with the low roof line. And so there's only so much of the Earth you can see because of that perspective. So when we see the weather balloons, and how flat it shows, that's not even high enough. But what does it show at that level? I mean, height of altitude, flat, straight, horizontal.
Right.
No curve. So we'd have to get a lot higher up to have a view of it to see what it is.
Right.
That's it. Now, what were you going to say about celestial navigation?
I was going to go to there next, but just to clarify, I was asking Neil these things just to make sure I have an understanding of his position. But the celestial navigation stuff, that's just interesting, right? Because you've been doing a lot of study on this, right? With the equatorial mount and all that. And celestial navigations.
No, equatorial mount is my new study, but celestial navigation started January 2020 when I connected the Black Swan to the sextant.
Oh, the sextant. I meant that, not the equatorial mount. Sorry. So, right. But this is interesting. Like, I know we can't use the heavens to map out the Earth, but then again, can we? Because we can use the heavens to traverse the Earth? Like,
Well, I'll
did you
tell
ever
you
think
what we
about
can
that?
use the heavens for. If that's a direct question, I could tell you what we can use the heavens for. For navigation, what do the stars tell us? That's a good question to ask, because they've been using the stars for navigation. 64 of them, actually. There's, millions, but 64 of the brightest stars.
Well,
Well, I'm trying to answer your question.
Well, the way they
You want
described it, it's like, yeah, we're on a level plane. That's one of them, right?
Well, I'd like to get there by step, if you don't mind. So sailors have been using stars in the sky, because you're saying, what did the heavens tell us? So I'm going to tell you what the heavens tell us. They tell us the GP, the ground position of each star when it's directly at zenith position overhead, highest in the sky if you're under it. They've got a book that tells you every hour, every minute, every second where that zenith position is for that star to create the GP for that star. They've got a tool called the sextant that lets you shoot an angle to that star in relationship to the flat horizon. So the horizon is your baseline. Wherever that star is your angle that the sextant gives you. You take that measurement, you minus it from 90, your zenith. And that is the number you times per degree equaling 60 nautical miles. And it gives you a circle of equal altitude with the GP of the star in the middle of that two-dimensional circle. And you're somewhere on that circle. You shoot another star to get a second circle of equal altitude, same way that you got the first. Now the two circles cross twice over each other. You're at one of those points. Do it a third time, and the third one crosses where you are, and that's your fix. Each GP of each circle, the radius could be 3,000 for one, 1,500 for the other, and 6,000 for the third. That's all flat, because radius line is a straight line. So the Earth is flat. That's what it tells us.
Right, I agree with that, but can we take this a step further to get a map using celestial navigation? Now, I'm not saying this map is going to be right or wrong, but it would be very interesting to get a map based on just celestial navigations and see what that map shows.
Well, what do you think longitude, what do you think longitude, latitude lines are put on for what purpose? What do you think that's for? To map out where you are.
Right. But we
already have it. We already have it. It's just flat.
Hold on a second. But there's two maps. There's the AE map, and then there's also the UTM grid.
No,
and they both got latitude and longitude.
No, latitude and longitude are stuff we made up. It's a grid. Okay. That's all it is. You can put it on anything. You've already got it in your mind. You want a map, either of a ball or something else. We just know.
I'm not saying a ball. Come on.
Okay, we just went through the AE.
I'm looking for a plane map.
We just went through the AE map with Neil. Why are you bringing it up again?
Because you mentioned longitudes and latitudes, and I was saying both these maps have latitude and longitude, so you're not really telling me much with that alone.
No, I want like that. You want more than I can offer is what you want.
But you said anything interesting. You said grid, right? Now a grid is square, right? The grids
Cartesian,
are like parallel
Cartesian reference, north, south, east, and west. You make a cross. You got four sectors, and you got grids. I mean, it's just basically a grid, so that you know where the GP is in relationship to you. We have maps already. Now the thing is, we're saying those maps represent the flat plane, and they're saying no, those maps are on the globe. That's where we are in the argument. Now, if you want to go and say what is the exact tolerances of every corner of the earth, I don't know.
Well, that's kind of like hold on a sec. That's a natural consequence of people, though, that they want to create models. I think it's just it's a failing in humanity.
I agree.
Well, hold on. Is it wrong?
I just want to add something there, because that, as I left the conversation, what I was thinking about making coffee was a video by Thrice 8 Hermes, where he's talking about men and their models, and how you'll find that the people, in this instance, will follow the person that just wants to go on and make a new model. And the person that relinquishes it will go, well, who's got the new model I can follow? And he was more focusing it towards politics, but he was literally using the word model when he was doing it. And I was like, well, this transposes perfectly, because that's exactly what we see, right? People who have what they understand to be the world based on a model taken from them, and then they just want the new one. What's going to replace that? And you're like, well, hold on. What do you mean replace it? You've just found out that you've got a massive lie, and you're going to go out and just pick up the next one that you can find. Just hasn't this process taught you anything? You know what I mean? That's just my attitude now. I've had a think about it. Righteous.
I agree.
That's what the guy wanted the other day too. He wanted that.
Neil, let me finish this. I agree with you, Nathan. That's why I gave a disclaimer at the beginning. It doesn't necessarily mean prove anything. I'm just saying it would be interesting to see what celestial navigation just alone, what kind of map that would bring out. Now, whether that map is true or not, I wouldn't say it would be logical, right, to base it, but it would be like what's that other word, like a deduction kind of thing? How do you word that? Like, is it called a logical inference or something like that? Or I'm not even sure what that word is.
What, with models?
But like, what's that?
Did you say with models? There's no logical inference. There's a correlation.
Correlation. Yeah. All right, great. That's good enough. Right. But it would be an interesting correlation, right? That's all I'm saying.
I'm sorry, but isn't that the same thing that the globe people do, though? I'm just being sincere here.
Right.
They get correlations, and then they go, hey, here's your model, with no
But
validation, no proof to it. So this is why I can't stand people that want to give a model for flat Earth or anything, because we don't have it.
Okay, but I didn't say this is where you live. I would just be curious to what that
Right.
would look like. Right? I did give a disclaimer to it.
So
I understand speculation is great, but yeah, speculation.
Just a quick question. So if no one knows never heard about flat Earth and the globe Earth thing, how would you explain where they live then?
Well, for me, in my opinion, the AE map and the globe Earth is like people are arguing within a false dichotomy. That's my opinion. Okay.
So how would you? So someone who's a normal person on the street, how would you explain flat Earth to them, and how would you show them?
Right, I know what you're saying. Like when I was younger, I was in this community. I was really curious of some explanation, even if the explanation was not right. Just having an explanation of an alternative really makes it a lot easier.
Hold on.
I agree.
Why are you doing this? Let's just try repositioning. Is it Max? Yeah, it is. Hey, Max. Let's just try repositioning your question slightly. Yeah. What field of work do you go in before I make an example? Just so I don't pick your field of work.
Sorry, say that again.
I want to pick an example that isn't.
I can't hear you. You're a bit too low. Can't hear you.
You can turn me up in Discord. I don't know if you know that. Anyway, I just want to pick a field of work that isn't your field of work, so I can pick an example that isn't something that you are familiar with.
All right, I'm a teacher as well as a football coach.
Perfect. So if I told you or demanded of you that you explain the engineering of bridges, what would you say to that?
I'll research and look it up.
Why? Why would you suddenly feel? Why would you suddenly feel responsible, based on me, just some guy, saying, "Explain suspension bridges to me"? You suddenly feel that it's your need to run away and learn about them, do you?
No, it depends what we was talking about. If you randomly said that, I would say, "Oh, I'm not an engineer. I don't build bridges," but I'll get back to you on that. That's what I would
brilliant.
say.
Okay, there's more. Perfect. So, if you happen to watch a YouTube video that pointed out that there was flaws in suspension bridges because somebody who was unrelated to the field of suspension bridges came across a flaw, and you happened to watch that video, and then you went to next man, did you know that there's a massive flaw in this particular suspension bridge? And that person turned around to you and said the same thing I've just said. how are you going to solve this problem of this flaw in the suspension bridge? What's your plans for the new one? What would you say to them?
Don't have time.
Don't have time. It's not my responsibility to sort this bridge out. It's not my responsibility to educate you on the nature of reality. The fact that I can point out where we have all, on a mass scale, been deceived doesn't mean it suddenly becomes my responsibility to educate them on the alternatives or provide them a new model. Far from it. If I go up to the bridge engineer and go, look, there's a massive crack here, and the guy turns back to me and goes, how are you going to fix it? I'd go, I'm not a bridge engineer. If I say there's a massive flaw in the heliocentric model, well, how are you going to fix it? What's the new... No. That's not my responsibility, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I hear that. But if you need to if you're explaining someone, it's good to just show them an idea of what it might look like.
Why?
But you give them, obviously, you say...
Why is that a good idea? Has it been a good idea in the past when you've offered up alternatives? Have people thanked you?
It makes their brain think.
Has it been a good idea in the past when you've offered up alternatives? Have people gone, oh, thank you so much? Or have they tried to rip apart your alternative?
I'll go with the second one. They'll try.
So why would it be a good idea?
No, but if you're talking to a normal person, not people on here. People on here are weird.
Hold on, what's normal?
But a real person will look at it, and you can have a real conversation with them.
Can you?
Real.
Give me one example.
They normally take it quite well. But people on here, no, they don't.
Well, give me an example. Give me an example of when that's happened that you can say, okay, well, this is when that actually happened. Here's an example of somebody who took it really well.
I'll give you my brother-in-law. So I showed him the flat Earth map and what it looks like, and he really looked into it. And he actually bought me a flat Earth book, a Robotham book anyway. But so for me showing him that, he's actually gone away and actually looked at it, and then he's bought me a flat Earth book. So it's just a good way of opening up a conversation with a normal person.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, how dare you, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by 10th Man, Neil, Brian, we did have Refracted Curvature, but he seems to have done a runner. A whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Greetings.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, hello. Good to have you all, good to have you all. I did a bit of an hour win as he's just about to join the show and pre-titled the show, despite not actually having a topic develop naturally. So I don't know if anybody spotted the thumbnail. If not, we won't try and force it into the subject I've titled the video with.
Like New Moon?
I could immediately suggests that I don't push it into that area, and Arwing does it immediately. Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of what you said there.
The first part I'll repeat. I said I don't necessarily want to force the subject into what I've titled the show, because I just found it interesting and then did a bit of an Arwin and renamed the show before it's actually happened, which isn't normally a good idea. So, but it's easy enough to change, right? So,
Sure.
somebody sent me a thumbnail. I'll get there, Arwin, I promise. Somebody sent me a thumbnail. So Kevin Polanski, and he did tell me the name of the artist of that picture, which I will bring up and say, as it's worth crediting, as it's a very beautiful picture. J.G. Friedman. So that's the picture of it's a moon being stolen on the back of a pickup truck, which I thought was very appropriate as people are making new moon videos at the moment.
Nathan, just a note, refracted curvature's having trouble joining the show. Can you do something on your end, or?
No, there's literally nothing I can do. If you guys have got no issues, it's I assume an issue he's got that I can't solve for him. Sorry, John, my bad. Can't do much for you.
Morning, guys.
Morning. How's it going?
Hey, Chocolate. I just want to state that that's what you get, John, when after all your loyalty. It's just the hell with you.
Did those words cross my lips? How dare you? Bloody Irish, always making stuff up.
Can't you just push a button, Nathan? Come on.
I can't. I'm pushing buttons to get people off mute. If you can try and join in Discord, John, I'll do nothing at all, and you'll hopefully be able to talk anyway. Okay, right. Should we do a bit of housekeeping? Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon, formerly known as Earth curve?
Same as last week. You're going to need R for that.
Well, there may be something. Give me a minute.
While you finish your sandwich, or think of the thing that could possibly represent Earth curvature, formerly horizons?
Finish the sandwich.
Okay, I thought that was the case. I'll let you finish your sandwich. No worries, Brian. Okay.
Well, according to the boulders, Polaris drops in the sky due to the Earth. If you move away from Polaris, that you're moving down the curve of the globe. That's all I got.
So by that logic, every time I go down the street and I look down the street, all those lights are setting, right, in the same way.
Getting smaller.
Because
lampposts,
they're moving away from
smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
No, that's a completely different thing altogether, Chocolate. Completely different.
Oh, that's different.
They already told me that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. They told you that. Okay.
Yeah.
Dude, if you change 180 degrees, things change direction in the world. Isn't that amazing?
It's a revelation. And also, Arwin, if you consider north as south, then things change direction in actual terms.
Yes. Yeah, man, that episode was special.
Well, somebody must have...
I had a real blast with the replay.
Somebody with a wide reach shared that show, because within the first hour of it being broadcast, it had over 1,000 views, and I think it's currently sat at about 4,000 views, and it's been out less than 24 hours. So somebody of significance has shared that show. There's no two ways about it.
It was a very good example of who and what we deal with.
The best part is that we tell these guys every day, like, you guys have to beg the question in order to make your arguments in the first place. No. For years told, we're not begging the question. And this guy comes on and is like, yeah, you gotta let me beg the question a little bit.
Professor Phil, of course we presume it's a globe.
Oh, of course, yeah.
No, his actual quote was something like, Nathan Oakley says we have to presuppose the Earth's a sphere. Pause. Well, yes!
I like Phil.
Any evidence they are the Earth radius?
They don't have another choice, right? They're correct. They have to.
Well, you gotta let me beg the question a little bit.
Well, speaking of begging the question, I think I slipped through the rumblings. any evidence the R value, the actual presupposition that Earth is a sphere, starts and ends with an R-based assumption. That's R, Earth radius. Any evidence thereof?
Yeah, lunar eclipses. Well, the moon doesn't actually get eclipsed. It just kind of goes a slightly different color and gets a bit darker. So nothing actually eclipses it, but that's the evidence.
But wouldn't you need to know the actual size of the moon in order to establish how big then the actual size of the Earth would be as its shadow?
No, because we have circular reasoning. So all I need to do is have a radius size or a moon size that suits the radius size that I am pre-assuming. So everything's kosher.
Plus, red shadows are a thing too.
Yeah,
don't know where, but those are a thing apparently.
Well, that's what they call Rayleigh scattering, supposedly, right? That it's red because of Rayleigh scattering. Now, there's no sunlight on it during a lunar eclipse because the globe Earth has blocked all sunlight to it. But funnily enough, at new moon, there's no Rayleigh scattering. You'd think you see a red moon in the sky, wouldn't you? In the blue sky, it being red on blue. You really see it, like red really stands out on blue, but you just don't see that.
You would think so, being that the sun would be pretty much in the same position that it would be every other night, right? On the other side of the globe. But apparently this big rock just disappears for like 2-3 days. Nobody has a problem with that. That's okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, you would think that from the lit side of the globe, that with all the lit side, with all that outshine and all the Rayleigh scattering, that you would definitely see at some point a moon rock in the sky. You know, even though the sun is behind the moon, you would definitely see it. Because considering during lunar eclipse, you do supposedly see it due to Rayleigh scattering, even though there's no light on it from the sun. Only the dark side of the globe is on it. So yeah, that's my evidence of R.
What? That's your evidence of R? I didn't expect that to be the conclusory statement. What the hell?
Well, that's what I gotta come up with.
Hey, are you trying to out all?
That was great.
It's just that was a total non sequitur. What? I don't get it. Does that give you R? You're going to expand on it?
That was the best example of what they do. Like, I'm going to talk about all this bullshit over here that has nothing to do with anything, but that's my evidence of R. Thanks.
Yeah.
Like moving your geographic location and then filming the stars, then moving your geographic location again and turning your camera phone to face the opposite direction and saying, look, they've changed, therefore Earth's a sphere beneath my feet.
Definitely.
Can I ask a sincere question since you're talking about moons a second ago? And the whole blue moon conversations recently is, how are they predicting blue moons if they have to base it on the atmosphere and the conditions of the atmosphere for a blue moon?
Hold on.
How are they predicting that?
Stop. Hold on. Blue moon is a term that's taken from the Gregorian calendar based on there being 2 moons full in one calendar month. So a blue moon isn't what we're talking about. We're talking about a new moon.
Correct. You were, though. This is totally separate. I'm sorry.
So if you're asking about blue moons, well, that's a byproduct of changing the cycles from having 13 to 12, and then eventually in that cycle you'll end up with 2 full moons in a single calendar month. But it's really arbitrary and meaningless. The cycles of the moon are continuing to do exactly what they do anyway, regardless of the structure of numbers that are put around them by us. So blue moons are kind of meaningless, in my opinion. But some people...
Yeah, but aren't they only blue to our eyes because of the atmosphere and they're claiming refraction? That's why we're seeing it blue, and they'd have to know the atmosphere conditions for it to even be that color?
The color-related questions, if it's specifically about the color blue, as opposed to the description of what they call a quote-unquote blue moon, then you're asking the wrong person.
Right, why it is blue to us.
I'm colourblind.
It would be the atmosphere, correct?
Someone else can answer. Don't know. Not very good with colours.
I wouldn't go on anything they say, Stacey. It's all a load of rubbish. Anything they tell you is all based on some pre-assumption and belief, isn't it? Always.
Oh, absolutely.
So they're telling you. I mean, the truth, why the moon does what it does and has different whatever colours sometimes. I mean, I mean, they can make an explanation for that particular time, but then when nearly exactly the same situation happens at a different time, they don't get the same result. You know, because they have to come up with a different story for that other time. You know, because they have to have many different stories that contradict each other. So I'm not getting smarter with you about it. I'm just saying, you know yourself. Any explanation they give you, you may as well forget about it and go actually look yourself, isn't it?
First of all, can I say, what's up, Stace? How you doing?
Hey, sweetheart, it's good to hear you.
Going on? What's going on?
Good to hear you too.
Not a dating site. Hello.
Not. What are you talking about, man?
Hey, it's called FED, right? Flat Earth dating?
No, it is not. Move on.
Oh my God.
I'm just implying. I'm being uncouth.
Say hello to a friend. Relax.
I'm just being uncouth. I'm trying to fish for a reaction, Stacey. I realise you're not flirting with each other. That was just a joke.
No. I'm definitely not. I'm dating his boy. Actually, I'm ready to marry his boy. So that's definitely not happening.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Oakley dokley.
But I do want to say I've seen plenty of pictures of like where the moon seems to just take like the same kind of tint or color that the sky is behind it. Like,
right, and that's what I was looking at. The blue moon is the reaction. The reason it's blue, the color blue to us, is because the atmosphere. And I'm thinking, well, how the hell are they predicting we're going to see a blue moon? It's going to be blue to us in our eyes because it is based on the atmosphere. So it was just kind of in my head wondering that.
Quick shout out to Jules Luds. He says, had enough of lies and nonsensical. Smash the super chat. No, nonsense. It's an exclamation mark at the end. Let's try that again. Had enough of lies and nonsense! Exclamation mark. Smash the super chat and like to help support and promote truth. Well, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, indeed. Smash the share button, as that is how this show reaches people. It doesn't receive a great deal of promotion naturally, so to speak, algorithmically, however you'd phrase that. So the show that went out that we were talking about in the pre-show and a little bit at the beginning of the show was very, very popular because somebody somewhere smashed the share button where they hadn't before. And yeah, that's what it takes for these particular shows in this particular corner of the internet to actually become popular. The audience sharing is pretty much the only way it gets. Oh no, Godzilla 37. Thank you first and foremost for the super chat. I'll say it in advance before I read it. A dating site ? Is chocolate begging the question again? What? Okay, thank you, Godzilla, for the super chat. I think my joke's been taken one step further than I'd have hoped already. But there we go. Much is life.
Damn, chocolate can't say hello to one female and the whole show just falls apart. What's going on here?
Crazy, isn't it?
Right?
He's just telling you gotta get married, bro.
No, relax.
Okie dokie. So no evidence of R then if we're going to exclude the moon. And in terms of its colour, I mean, in terms of its I will segue away from it, but come back to it in terms of colour, because the only thing that I ever noticed in terms of a colour shift was when I filmed a lunar eclipse, and the only thing of note other than the colour shift, which wasn't exactly predominant, I could tell it was changing, but like I say, I'm colourblind, so that particular aspect of it didn't really, wow me. What I noticed was the shift in temperature. Now, just could be coincidence, but by the same token, as it eclipsed as I was filming it, I stopped being able to film it because the temperature dropped so much that my fingers stopped working. And I had to subsequently go and get my wife out of bed and go, I can't take the last shots through the telescope. I can just go and hold the camera. I can't operate the camera, rather. My fingers have stopped working. So I had to wake her up because it was about 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning, I can't remember what time, late. And she had to come down and take the last couple of shots of totality because my fingers didn't function anymore. Working perfectly fine at the start, not working perfectly fine. Now, obviously, it's very late at night. Could just be that it just got colder, but it was noteworthy. And that's the only thing I can remember of filming that eclipse that was noteworthy.
I was hoping we could get to the axial rotation question so I can laugh at somebody.
Hopefully that's the next one he asks then.
Dealing with an intruder for a moment there. My bad.
Right.
Do you move on with a bit of housekeeping?
Intruder? Did you shoot him?
Not that kind
I
of
was gonna
intruder.
make a little joke, maybe, if I can.
Go on, Owen.
So yeah, if the Earth is rotating underneath us, right, supposedly, as a globe, because the stars are rotating around us, well, does that mean that the Earth would be spinning in two different directions simultaneously if you just turn around and then suddenly the stars are spinning in the other direction? Would that mean
you didn't know? Is
does
that
mean
20?
that the Earth is spinning in two directions at the same time, two opposite directions?
Yeah, it's the 2021 Earth where the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere spin in different directions.
Oh shit!
You didn't know?
Man,
Bro.
the friction at the equator must be
We gotta
murder.
put you on game, bro.
You know what's wrong? All the globers, when they're north of the equator, they only stand looking north. They never ever turn any other direction. And when they go south of the equator, they all stand looking south only. So that's why they're confused.
I think you'll find turning around isn't possible on a flat plane.
Yes. Apparently, yes.
Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Wait, hold up. I wanted to kind of give you a shout out, Nathan, because I just heard the episode when Kocho showed up here, Kocho the clown. Talked about his father figure, Blue Marble. And I seen you very intently try to set up the debate between them two. So that episode had me dying. So yeah, kudos to that because it was hilarious to hear Kocho just two reference frames, infinite reference frames. Oh, so bad I wasn't here for that. It was great.
Yeah, it kind of makes me a little bit sad because for the entirety of that show, Kosho just lied through his back teeth on multiple occasions. And even with QE, literally one of our own coming to his defense and saying, no, try and look at this in the best of light. And then very quickly going, yeah, he is actually a liar. That's just disappointing that it's descended to this since 2020, in fact, since the Black Swan, in fact, where you end up with people just having to lie. Lie about what they've claimed in the past, lie about their current claim, lie about what the globe is claiming, just lots and lots and lots of lies, and it's kind of getting a bit irritating and frustrating that our opponents should have to do such things. You know, it was one thing when they were spewing rhetoric and we were challenging it and they were double-speaking their way around it and we were pointing out contradictions. It's another thing to just flat-out lie, which is what we get now.
Well, that shows you the level that we've reached in this debate, right? They can't even pass off their old bullshit, so now they just have to just lie about it. It's a damn shame on them.
Yeah, it is a shame, and my frustration is, bore out in these shows. I wear my heart on my sleeves and show how I feel in terms of the way I'm presenting myself. I'm pretty honest in that respect. Obviously, I've got a persona to a certain degree. I know I'm being filmed and recorded, but by the same token, my reaction is what it is, and certain people are critical in the comments going, you should try and be nicer. It's like, you try and deal with these zealots. See how quickly you keep your temper.
Yeah, I can't. Like, the people that say that are obviously people who have zero experience with these people that we argue with. Remember what's his name? He was looking for you to be nicer, and then after about 2 weeks of dealing with the Globers, he said, "No, you're right. You're doing the right thing." Who was it? It was on QE show. He was saying we should open more dialogue and have more conversation. It's like,
yeah,
no,
I know who you're talking about. I can't remember his name, but yeah.
I know who you mean. It's like the tip of my tongue. He's a black guy, deep voice. Oh, what's his bloody name? It's going to bug the crap out of me now.
Yeah,
if you're listening,
or something like that.
If you're listening out there, I'm really sorry I've forgotten your name. It will come to me. It's on the tip of my tongue. But exactly, he was in the comments reasonably. He had a name a bit like Righteous Force or something like that. God damn it, why is it? Anyway, he was saying, you need to be more calm with them. The information will be better received if you're nicer and etc. etc. And then, like you say, he joined a couple of debates, got into the wrangle dangle with just random globe believer. And before you know it, he's swearing and cursing at them. You know what I mean? And afterwards, he pretty much came on Bullbusters and said, yeah, actually, it's not as easy as it looks. Words to that effect.
Yeah. You're not given any choice.
Wasn't it Slick or something? Slick something?
No, it wasn't
Slick James.
No, Slick James is a different guy. So Slick James was really quite a cool character, but then he started saying quite nasty things to some of the female members of the Discord server, and he got very quickly banned for it. There we go, different guy. Anyway, should we move on? A bit more housekeeping? As there's a stony pause that isn't caused by a kid bursting in.
Was it distance to the sun?
I was going to say distance to the sun, yeah. Any evidence thereof?
What? Yeah, you can take an angle. It's 4,000 miles away.
Oh, yeah. So you're taking your parallel lines in triangulation terms, and while I have already agreed, and we had lots of whooping from Eli, he's like, oh, you're all flat sky as well. Well, yes and no. In terms of the way that the triangulation works, and I've never denied that you can't triangulate this stuff. Yes, people can take measurements of these stars, or what are called stars in the case of the sun. But does that mean that you know the actual location of this object? Regardless of how you triangulate with it and the perspective aspect. Good video, by the way. I watched your video this morning, Brian. Excellent. Just what I needed when I've been woken up about 5 a.m. So I don't know why you were up that early, but you were publishing videos, which I was very grateful for. So I'll ask you the question outright. So, okay, we're performing triangulation on, I don't want to lead you, on a star, or 3 stars to gain your fix. And you're saying, well, it's 4,000. So why is that not just acceptable to say, okay, well, we know the height because we use them for triangulation?
Oh, well, the problem is that it's 4,000 miles at a certain angle, but when that angle changes, it's not 4,000 miles anymore. It's some other miles. Because all you're doing is calculating the angular free space that you can see between the surface of Earth and whatever celestial body that you're looking at. You know, it's like you're trying to use angular, no, not me, but others are trying to use angular measurements to determine the height of a celestial body. All it is a light source up in the sky. And all you have is a free space between the surface, the Earth, and it. So all you can do is take so if I take an angle to something and it's 60 degrees, and that makes the thing whatever 3,000 miles high. What about when that angle to the same thing, when that thing moves a distance from me, or you move a distance from it, and the angle to it is 20 degrees? Is it still 3,000 miles high? By my angle measurements, no. So they can't. It's not possible to gain an angular height to something, a celestial body, just by using angles. Angles are for angular size measurements that you can do with a mountain or something like that. You can't do that, with the sun or a star.
Perfect. So This is the first time it's happened in this order. This typically happens in the other order, and you'll know what I mean by order when I say the next statement. So what Brian has just described is how the triangulation for an intangible object isn't reasonable if you haven't got its actual size. Having one measurement only to it won't give you the distance. Now, you can assume it, but that changes as you move. Now, it still all works with, we'll get to this later in the show, I'm sure, but parallel lines for zeniths or GP positions of these stars. But ultimately speaking, that is the starting basis for what typically gets argued about, or did back in 2015, the globe measurement to the stars, which requires that they do the exact same calculation we're now poo-pooing as flat earthers, and then they insert R to push the distance out further. So the triangulation of these celestial objects can be then utilised in the exact same way that it could be utilised by flat earthers, but with one extra presuppositional step inserted, and that would be the radius of Earth. So it's come in the correct order. No, you can't triangulate it, even though you accept the nature of reality, that would be a flat plane beneath your feet. Even if you presuppose that you've got a flat plane for a sky, you've got no way of verifying the actual size or actual distance to qualify your triangulation that changes as you move your position. So to therefore take that starting point on a flat plane, triangulate it with triangles that have got flat bottoms, 90 degrees, etc., etc., and then, further to that, bend the angle with an R value assumption is so far beyond reasonable, it's untrue. It's unreasonable to do it on a flat plane. It's unreasonable to do it on a presupposed spherical surface after measuring it on a flat plane. Hope that's concise.
Well, if you look at what they term Polaris to be now in their model, which is, the last time I checked, I think it was 443 light years. Now, I know that's bringing in the 2 speed of light, and that doesn't exist. But we're talking about the globe model, so none of it exists. So 443 light years away. What angle did they use to create that? You know, all they can do is take an angle off a flat plane and then convert it to globe. Because they can't take an angle off a globe unless they use a chord through the center of through the equator line or some nonsense like that. I mean, it's like an angle. What's an angle going to do for you? An angle will tell you an approximate GP of a celestial body on the surface of Earth. The only reason that's possible to know is because you could work with Polaris to find out that if you move a certain distance from it, it will drop a certain distance in the sky. If you move a certain distance closer, it'll rise a certain distance in the sky. And they found that all the rest of the stars do the same, except for they move as opposed to being stationary like Polaris. You can figure that out on the ground, but that's it. That's all you can do. An angle is not going to tell you what height a light in the sky is. I mean, I don't know about this. Maybe it's a camera thing. But when these high altitude balloons go up, where are all the stars then? I don't know. Maybe it's just maybe it's a camera thing. I don't know. Where are the stars then? How can you determine the height of something that just seems to disappear when you send a balloon up? You know, you can't. It's just their lights. They give us certain navigational properties. That's all you can say, isn't it?
Quick shout out to Jules Lutz again. If we are revolving around the sun, yeah, we are, according to the heliocentric model, yeah, fair enough, then why do we see the same stars in January as we do in June? Rhetorical question.
Well, as Tent Man said, when he talked to the celestial navigator, they know what the stars are going to be for hundreds of years in the future. You know, the globe side can only claim that the stars change, or Polaris used to be a different star and it's going to be this other star, and that all happened. That will all be happening in 25,000 years. So you can make the exact same claim. Sorry, John.
We're supposed to be on this roller coaster that's flying through this vacuum. Should we be seeing a different sky at some point? you would think.
Yeah.
Maybe a new star or two in the thousands of years that we've been observing these things.
No, typically the heliocentric model is actually pretty good with it's back engineered into what has been observed, so it's typically not awful as a model. Don't jump down my throat, I should say, in that regard. But you know, there's a lot to be commended about the heliocentric model. It's not sold. It's missold. It's sold as your world that you actually live on. Well, we don't live on models. But if it was sold as a philosophy where it's explained that you have to assume that, you know, you're at the top position of this sphere that is being used to design the heavens above you, then you would recognise that it's a way of understanding the movements of the lights in the sky. Now, the fact that the model always puts you on a ball that's rotating beneath your feet that you're always at the top of, if you understand the always of the top of bit, you then don't have to consider that, well, actually, we mean you're literally and everyone else on a ball, therefore there's people hanging off the bottom of it, antipode from your position. Then you start scratching your head and having to make up and reify stories of gravity, etc., to make this model reification work. But it's like, well, that doesn't change what the philosophical value of it in terms of its modelling capabilities when it's a back engineering of the movements of the stars in the first instance. So you can't really knock it for that, you know. I mean, if somebody can show me an actual flaw, I mean, the title of the show is the new moon. We're supposed to see 0.8% of it. Okay, show it me then. Oh, well, we can't. We don't see it. But we see 0.8% of it as predicted in the model. Well, show it me. Well, we don't see it. So you go on. So it's like, okay, so this is a problem then. If we should see it, let's see it. We don't, so we don't. That should be the end of the argument. Now, this came up years ago.
Why did people look at you like that?
I don't know. She wants.
Say again. Rookie, go ahead. Thank you. Just Rookie, did you want to add something?
I'm sorry, I didn't realize my mic was on.
No, that's okay. Don't worry. These things happen. But if we're supposed to see a certain proportion of the moon, then show it us. If you can't show it us, concede that that particular aspect of your prediction's incorrect. And when Sleeping Warrior covered this several years ago, he described it in terms of seeing an eclipse. Now, notwithstanding the issues that you have with parallel light rays coming from your sun and then the descriptions that have them diverging in order to create penumbra and umbra, if we just ignore those obvious issues that are also going to coincide with this problem, they have a prediction that comes out to a very similar prediction to what an eclipse is described as in their model. Now, that was the way that Anthony positioned his argument several years ago. I backed it then, I'll back it now. It's like, yeah, that's a problem.
Well, Nathan, isn't that the same problem when we're asking for the R based on 3959? It's supposed to be there at the Black Swan picture at 1.22 miles at the 1 foot observer height, and it's not. So there's a flaw right there, just like the other.
Yeah. The model's got problems in reification. That's if you transpose it onto your reality, suddenly it doesn't make a lot of sense. Well, when you're trying to understand the movement of stars, the limitations of a rock in a sky vacuum holding people antipodal aren't really an issue, because you appreciate it for its philosophical value in describing the movement of the stars, which the heliocentric model's pretty good at. Well, you know, the problem comes when the church says, oh, do you know what, we could make that our reality. We can make it everyone's reality. Why not? You know, that becomes the problem, because then it's sold to you in a packaged way from pretty much birth as an acceptance of a reality that isn't your reality. Now, we could get into the whys and wherefores of why people would do that. It always boils down to the same thing, control and power. Well, aside from that, just recognise where things are philosophically valuable and where they're not. Rather than saying, let's pull apart its actual use as a model. Same goes for maps, as we were talking about it in the pre-show. It's like, but it's a tool, and therefore has a use. Well, just look at it within the constraints of its useful nature and not beyond, rather than arguing with someone that says this particular map is going to be your map and you say it represents the world thusly and it doesn't. I see that happening and go, why are you getting involved? Have you made this map? Is it your new idol? I don't get it.
Good morning.
Morning, Eli.
So I heard you guys talking about eclipses, and maybe you did note this. Is my mic clear, by the way?
Yeah, you're all good.
All right. So maybe you noted this already, but the guy at NASA, I forget his name right now, but he uses the frame of reference of geocentrism to basically not predict the eclipses, but the model that they're working on is a geocentric model. So coming off the back of that, I like to read this quote from Einstein and Infeld, The Evolution of Physics, page 212. The struggle so violently in the early days of science between the views of Ptolemy and Copernicus would then be quite meaningless. Either coordinate system could be used with equal justification. The two sentences, the sun is at rest and the earth moves, or the sun moves and the earth is at rest, would simply mean two different conventions concerning two different coordinate systems, which is, I think, what you guys were talking about. So,
correct.
Anyways, good morning.
Correct. and thank you, excellent quote from Einstein in respect to the convention that's being used to describe the movement of the stars could equally be taken from a reference frame that has us geocentric, that would be sun moving around us, or heliocentric, sun at centre, us moving around it. Both are equally valid. It depends on which reference frame you want to describe this philosophical way of describing the movement of the stars with. Well, you can do either. Equally valid, right? Well, does that mean that it's equally true that the sun moves around us and we move around the sun? No, it's just a model. It's a convention, as Einstein puts it. The problem occurs when you work outside of the convention. Precisely what's happened in modern times. Same applies for evolution. Take a classification system and then say that I have separated this species into this category and that species into that category. And then you make up a little story about how one arbitrarily assigned categorized group has actually come from the other arbitrarily assigned categorized group. And you go, whoa, 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 this sounds very much like you're working outside of this convention that you've used to describe things and name them and group them. Now it's the basis of a way of life coming into existence. No, you're just working outside of the convention, which was quite useful to be able to tell, I don't know, kids, well, that's a mammal. That's a fish.
I often view people like Einstein and things that he says, like that quote there, and the other quote he has of how I can't remember verbatim, but how you can't tell by optics alone whether the sky is moving or the earth is moving. I view those kind of statements from him and others like him as being apologetic for their model, because they're trying to say that they're pointing towards your experience will be that the sky will rotate, but we're telling you that it's the ground that's rotating. So we're kind of saying that it's hard to optically prove either way, right? Which is giving them a 50-50. When the truth is Einstein and the rest of you, that the earth is not moving and the sky is moving. That is the truth. But they're being they're giving you something by giving your experience some relevance. You experience non-movement of the earth. So they're giving that some relevance, as they're not hand waving it away like the people we deal with. But they're also then ushering in their own little nonsense. It's hard to tell optically whether it's the sky or the earth is rotating. It's not hard to tell. The earth is not rotating. The sky is obviously rotating. It's very easy to tell that. So anything other than that is completely rubbish. Go on, sorry, Chocolate.
They're just telling you same difference. Right? You can't tell.
Yeah.
You're either on a ball and the ball's spinning and making everything in the sky look like it's spinning, or it's the sky that's actually not spinning and you are the one spinning. Like, it's ridiculous.
It's a preemptive, apologetic exposure for their own failings. So they can say, exactly as you begin, look no difference. So before you can say, well, there's going to be consequences of your description, so surely it's this description, which comes across as strong if you've positioned it as geocentric. Whereas if they position it as geocentric, give you the explanation, but then go on to disclaim that you wouldn't be able to tell any difference, therefore heliocentric, you go, oh, okay, well, they've already explained it, haven't they? You're like, well, no, because the natural consequences of being heliocentric, you definitely notice other things that they're not describing when they describe the claim to be apparent movement of the stars. Yeah, okay, yeah, we've got apparent movement of the stars. Well, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference if it was actually you moving, wouldn't I? No. Oh, right, okay. What about the other things that I would notice if I was moving? Well, let's just not talk about those. You won't notice. What about if I point out a consequence of things like Coriolis deflection we don't see? Well, we'll tell you how we wouldn't expect to see them, and simultaneously tell you how it's also a proof that we spin when we do see it, even though you're pointing out that we don't. And so it goes on.
Well, Mitchell from Australia lifted the drone up, left it stationary hovering position, and the stars in the sky kept moving. So it's off the Earth.
Uh-oh.
So basic, so simple. There's claimed to be a 15 degrees an hour drift as Earth turns underneath stuff not attached. It's called Coriolis deflection. From your position, turning beneath things not attached, you will see them seem to drift because you turn beneath them. Coriolis deflection. Not actually drifting, just hovering above a rotating platform that's moving beneath it. So if you're on that platform moving beneath it, you'll see it seem to drift. So a drone would hover and you'd watch it seem to drift away because you turn beneath it. That's their claim. And that claim results in football games being won because Earth turns beneath the football to cause deflection. And you get a quarter of an inch or whatever is claimed of a ball deflecting to mean it hits the goalpost rather than not hitting the goalpost as Earth turns beneath the football. But you'd notice because your drone would go up, hover, you wouldn't press a thing on the sticks, and you'd turn beneath it. Well, you'd notice that.
Well,
you're absolutely wrong. Only Smoking the Grass Tyson can notice these things while watching television from his comfy couch. But the entire team that's on the field, that's actually and the guy that kicked the field goal, none of those guys ever noticed. As a matter of fact, nobody in sports has ever noticed any type of apparent drift when a ball has left the non-inertial reference frame. Only Neil deGrasse Tyson from his couch watching television.
And you know who I would look to for things like that? If I was interested in such things, throwing games, I'd go to the bookmakers. The people who are literally monitoring what they eat on an individual basis for each of the athletes on the field. To that level, do you not think that if there was going to be a deflection given a certain direction of the stand, that the bookkeepers wouldn't take that into account when putting down their odds? Yeah, they absolutely would.
Of course they would. Where the bookies at? Are you serious? Come on.
Hey, after Brian talks, go to Master B. I got 2 slides, Nathan.
Well, as you've come up, I was about to refer to you anyway, because you've given us examples with the same thing, exactly the same thing. It's just not football, it's golf. And you're like, yeah, do you not think they'd calculate that in? If the ball's got a hang time of several seconds, you're going to want to factor in any deflection that it might take and then factor that into your swing. Well, who's doing that? Well, I'll tell you who's doing it. Absolutely nobody's doing it because it's not a concern. Well, if it was a concern, as is claimed to be the case by Neil deGrasse Tyson, literally claiming a game was won or lost as a result of it, then people would factor it in all the time.
There would be a never-ending, powerful westerly wind.
Yeah, the surface winds debunk it alone. Just let me address Rams, then we'll come to this night sky image. I'm sorry, Brian. Yeah, the fact that we've got multiple directions of surface winds debunks the claim of Coriolis deflection in the first instance. It also immediately debunks their rebuttal, which is to say it's all travelling together, no deflection to see. But, all right, so we've got one direction of wind then. Everything's moving in one direction with the Earth that's moving beneath it. Well, then you wouldn't have any other directions of surface winds, right? That debunks it immediately. Anyway, we've got this night sky up 10th.
All right. Sorry, Brian. You'll have to go after me.
Okay.
All right. So I got this from AJC 1844 YouTube channel. And this is the night sky. And as you can see on the top, it's a star map. And it says Southern Hemisphere Edition. So you're supposed to point to the south. But look on the far left of the blue curved part, it says east. And on the far right, it says west, because the stars rise from the east and set to the west. Now go to the next one. Now this is a star map of the northern hemisphere pointing north. And this time it's reversed. The east is on the right side because it rises in the east and sets in the west. So this should take care of that question.
Oh, it's just so bloody obvious. I mean, I don't know how many times we said to the guy on the last show that, yeah, the reason specific reason for this occurrence is because you've turned around. I mean, it's 2016 at best level argumentation.
Seriously.
But before the point is totally lost, I just want to state what I was trying to say was when people like Einstein and Neil deGrasse Tyson, who I'm sure has said similar stuff in today's world, say stuff like it's hard to tell whether it's the Earth rotating or the sky rotating. What they're doing there is they're giving themselves a 50-50 chance, and then they're claiming it's a globe. So if it's hard to tell, how can you claim either way?
Oh, just like the same way he threw Eratosthenes all under the bus. Oh, what he did could easily be done on a flat plane. Oh, all right, thanks. So that's not proof of curvature then? Oh, okay, thanks, smoking the grass. Appreciate that.
Yeah, they give themselves a 50-50 chance and then claim you're wrong. It's like, hang on a minute. If it's a 50, for a start, there is no 50-50 chance. You don't have a 50% of this. You have 0%, but you're giving yourself 50% of a chance, and then you're claiming that you're correct. If you only have 50% and your statement is you can't tell either way, then how can you make a claim? You know what I mean? It's like really cheeky. But anyway, that's what I was trying to say.
It's crazy because the truth is everywhere. I mean, even like, as people have this belief that satellites are in space, whatever satellites are or aren't, even on the NASA website, they say, well, the ones that are conventionally used, the computations work out simple enough on a flat plane. From NASA's website, even when they're talking about satellites. Like, I don't understand how people can read this stuff and not just wake up.
They've been convinced of opposite worlds, right? Things that make sense on a flat plane obviously continue to make sense on the exact opposite of a flat plane, which is a spinning ball, right? You just read that and it just glazes over you, like you just don't even pay it any mind.
Elijah,
that's literally what you have to do.
Elijah, people are like sheep, and the ballers are just like that when it comes to anything heliocentric. So a good example would be, I could go to a baller and say, how would you like to buy some oceanfront property in Tucson, Arizona? They say, yeah, how much is it? Because they're not thinking. You can't have oceanfront property in Arizona. Arizona doesn't meet the ocean. So when you bring an example of what the ball can't do, and the sphere is impossible, it doesn't matter to them because they're not thinking. They've accepted this paradigm they're in, and they fall for everything. Until they wake up and start critical thinking and logical skills are applied, you can't reach these people. That's just my take.
I remember years ago, Unorthodox came here, and we got into the whole discussion about planes and pilots training over a flat plane, and why? I remember asking them, well, why are they trained to fly over a flat plane? Like, when does the training to fly over a ball kick in? Because that doesn't ever seem to happen. I don't see any pilots that's ever shown that. And he was just like, well, because it just makes sense. Oh, it makes sense to train to fly over a flat plane when that's literally the opposite of what you're about to fly over. I mean, that's like telling me I'm going to train to drive a race car in a swimming pool. It's like literally that dumb to say something like that.
I think a lot of these guys too can't fathom a flat Earth alternative to what they already think the world is. That they've never come across a valid potential explanation in a flat Earth context. I think for some people that's the case.
just on the airplane example there with the chocolate cave, that is one of those 50-50 moments I talked about a few minutes ago, because their only actual claim is that they follow an altitude, but then they claim that altitude goes around the globe, right? So they have to beg the question straight away. It's like, well, we just follow an altitude, but the altitude goes around the globe, and we follow that altitude around the globe. Now, besides that logic being completely flawed, they're basically saying they follow an altitude. You'd have to follow an altitude across a horizontal plane as much as you have to follow an altitude if you were able to have an altitude flying around the globe.
No.
You'd have to do the same thing.
No, you wouldn't.
If you want to
that's wrong. It'd be drop. You'd have to account for.
But you're still, but I'm saying, I'm only going off of their claim. They're giving themselves a 50-50 chance by saying they'd have to follow an altitude, and then they're just begging the question.
Yes, that's more like it. Thank you. I should probably jump the gun there. I was just outraged by you saying it's the same. Anyway, I'm just a quick shout out. So, shout out to Jules Lids again. Could it be that most people are now happily ignorant and don't want to know the truth? Is anyone else having this experience? Yeah, the Matrix analogy stands perfectly true as he walks around the simulation that they've got control over, training program, if you will. And he says that most people are blissfully unaware of the control structures that are around them, and when they find out, they'll fight to retain them. I'm paraphrasing it, I'm not very good at quoting Morpheus, but by the same token, the sentiment is there. What he is saying is, what I have defined now as actual globe believers. Those are the people that are just under the impression that they're on a sphere because they've been told so, and they've got no real concern to check otherwise. Doesn't really factor into their life very much, so therefore it's just taken as read. That's a normal globe believer. They might have a tertiary knowledge of what the globe entails. Well, that's a normie. Metaphorically, the person plugged up to the Matrix that doesn't know they're plugged up to the Matrix in that movie. Well, once the person appreciates that what's around them isn't actually the reality that they've been told, they might start paying a little bit more attention to it and then immediately rebel against it because they want to retain their globe faith. Now that is the moment of change. It's the purple pill, if you will. The person that stumbles across this subject and then falls down the hill. But they want to remain as they were. They want to still be a globe believer in blissful ignorance of any of this horrible, evil, flat earth stuff. And when they get here, they want to poke the blame and point the finger at the person that they see as the ruining of their more than happily blissful ignorance on a globe. They'd rather just stay that way. And they'll fight to get back up the hill. Well, what are they going to fight with? The hill itself? The fact that the proofs that they thought they held dear aren't proofs anymore? The hill will just fight them for that. They can't climb up the hill in that respect. So they fight the people that they find are at the bottom, still hanging around. That's us. Yeah? And they'll fight with them. You were at the bottom of the hill shouting. Anyway, enough of my analogy.
What's interesting with your example is the Matrix, if I use it the way I was imagining in my mind. So there's those that are plugged into the Matrix and fighting the illusion of whatever the powers to be want them to believe. And then there's those who question it and take the red pill and are unplugged from the Matrix, and they challenge everything. So when these two types meet, baller and flat earther, let's use the example, the baller starts defending the illusion because he's still plugged into the Matrix. Whereas the one that's been unplugged, took the red pill, woke up and is asking questions and saying, but where's the drop? Where's the R? Where's the, all these different things. The other person who's still plugged in is defending the illusion, the model, the falsehood, as if it's real. And they can't be wrong because you must be wrong. And so in real time, there is a discourse. One's defending the model that can't be proven, and the other one is saying, hey, I've been unplugged, I'm asking questions, and you don't have good answers. This is what we have in the flat earth debate all the time.
Right. But metaphorically, the bottom of the hill where these people interact is symbiotic. Well, the one can't exist without the other. Now, you've got the, He-Man equivalent of walking off into the sunset as the alternative. Now, what I'm saying to those of you who are on the flat earth side, let's start there, is that you don't actually have to stay at the bottom of the hill. You don't actually have to shout back through the fence at other people on the other side of the fence. That's not necessary. It's not your requirement. Again, we discussed this in the pre-show when I was asked by Max, I think it was, you know, well, what do I give someone as an alternative? When they're like, well, what model do I now adhere to? It's like, no. You're going to help this person if you can encourage them to walk away from that hill. And at the bottom of the hill, in a big trash pile, there's all sorts of other crappy maps and models all scattered around. Now, you can rummage around in them, but you could just walk off, away from the hill, and the screaming, you know. Now, don't get me wrong, there's going to be times that you need milk, and you're going to have to go back to the hill because that's the only damn place you can get milk, right? But it doesn't mean that when you do that, you have to get involved in the wrangle-dangle with the people in the periphery that you know are at the bottom of the hill, fighting tooth and nail to try and get back up, and trying to drag the people who are trying to, although they may not know it yet, trying to walk off into the sunset. Now, walking off in the sunset is something that I'm trying to get across to Neil quite frequently. Yeah, when you don't care about the guy that's like, what model do I replace it with? Or, you know, well, you must realise that you've been deceived. When you stop caring about that, right, is when you've walked off into the sunset and you're like indifferent to it. Now, I don't know if this is a unique position. I'm sure there's plenty of people who are in my position that go, well, I don't really care on a general level. You know, it doesn't actually interfere with my life very much at all anymore. I'm actually quite happy, you know, and it's not because of the flat earth debate. You know, that makes me happy from producing videos because I love being a YouTuber. But the actual flat earth bit, it doesn't really have a great deal of bearing on my life anymore. In fact, to the point where, you know, if I'm teaching as a Copernicus to my kids, which I am at the moment, it really doesn't I don't break a sweat and go, oh no, I need to tell you the alternative while I'm teaching you this. Literally, it doesn't faze me in the slightest. I'm indifferent to it, right? So that's where you need to try and get to, as opposed to the sleepless nights potentially because your friend, relative, neighbour has a belief that you think they shouldn't have anymore. It's like, if you've intentionally shouted to the top of the hill and got them to fall down it, then maybe you should reflect internally on what you've done to that normie. You know, basically messed up his very happy, blissful ignorance. You know, did you give him a warning first? Did you stand there with the blue and red pill and tell him the consequences of what you were going to tell him when you forced him to roll down that hill? Or she?
Well, if you are...
Don't they want truth?
Neil, if you are going biblical, then where you meet these people are years beyond their first sin. Which is basically, I mean, you got to understand this, because when people tell themselves falsehoods from children and don't question it, you're not going to undo that in a day. As a matter of fact, this person takes falsehood as truth because they've rejected truth, and they've rejected what? So they've been cast a grand delusion and they're in the hands of the adversary. What do you think you're going to do about that? The people that are seeking truth are the people you should be looking for, because you're wasting time on people that have already made their choice.
With that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you. Smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. I've been Nathan Oakley. Stay tuned if you're watching on a premiering stream, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
hand me a specific model and tell me exactly what the Earth is. And I'm like, yeah, good luck with that. I'm just telling you what it's not.
Chocolate, I read this thing last night before I went to sleep, and it says how this guy has debunked stupid flat earthers and weather itself, just the weather patterns, debunk flat earth. First thing he starts asserting is gravity. I'm going to find it. I'm going to read it out tomorrow. I'm busy working. I don't got the time. But you got to hear this stuff, boy.
We'd love to ask him how we have any weather in the first place.
Oh, wait. I posted it. Listen, I posted it in Master B. Just pop that on and read a couple of paragraphs of that.
They're going to kick off in the after show? Are there any fundies around?
Yeah, anybody who thinks curve this straight, I'd like to talk to you about oceanfront property in Arizona.
Curved is straight, drifting and not drifting are the same thing. At best, what you've done is debunk the radius.
Horizon means spearhead.
Definitions of words are meaningless. You gotta let me beg the question a little bit. I mean, like, we got a whole slew of crap. Are there any ball heads to come in here and defend all this crap that's been spewed at us for all these years?
And how about, what was it, last week? Was it Brian or someone that said he was in Brandon's and someone said don't, or no, it was Eli. Eli, what was that phrase about 90 degrees and the sextant?
Don't mention it because it has nothing to do with the use of the sextant.
Now, quote unquote, that's going to be one of those lines you'll never forget, because what do you think zenith is?
The degree measurement that shall not be named. Whoa.
What do you think a zenith distance is?
Anything but 90.
Yeah, their latest
comical.
Their latest way of getting around this is saying that's not the angle that's important because it's not the angle you're measuring. You're like, no, but you're going to be acquiring the center point below that so you can draw a circle around it with a radius. That's where you get your GP from. That's what it is. Well, in order to do that, when you're utilizing the triangulation method, then the calculations would assume that you've got a 90-degree angle to get those maths to actually work. So it's like, well, you're not measuring the 90-degree angle. No, you don't need to, because it's flat. So that's not necessary. It's always going to be there. It's always there. Wink, wink. You don't need it. What do you mean measuring the 90? Well, no, you'd only be measuring 90 degrees to it if you were directly below it. Well, that's not going to be useful if you're trying to figure out where you are in relation to that position that you've got 90 degrees to at all times. But what, you're not measuring the 90, that's not the important measurement. No, that's true. Your measurement to the star versus the 90 degree at the horizon you get with the horizon. Well, yeah, you don't need to do that other than just assuming that you've got 90 degrees to whatever position is below that star when you measure the horizon. Very simple.
Let's clean it up a little bit, make it even simpler. When they say zenith, it means 90. Okay? That's the GP. It's directly overhead. And the zenith distance is u to the GP. That's the distance from where you are to the GP. And that's a right angle. And that will never change in celestial navigation.
Right.
So when you say you don't need 90, you're way off.
Yeah, you need 3 of them. And Brian beautifully phrased this in his video today, which is you can't have parallel zeniths on a sphere. To do the triangulation, every one of those points that is pointing directly down towards the ground is all lining up parallel with each other. All of those stars' positions to their GP are all parallel. And must be for it to work. Well, that simple detail debunks any notion that it's taking place on a sphere, because they wouldn't be parallel.
You all just don't understand, right? So just because they actually use the Earth as if it were flat to navigate with that device, yeah, they still explain it afterward. You know, you have to apply the circumdicular mathematics to show how that would work on a ball, right? So, yeah.
Anybody want to challenge this from Discord? That's sort of what I'm hoping to get moving along, because if not, I've got a sprog that's screaming in the background that I could much more have fun playing with than waiting around for a fundy to pipe up.
Hey guys, I was hoping to run something by you that I've been thinking about, and I was thinking about Earth spin. If the Earth was spinning, it would create a centripetal force that would supposedly pull us off. But if you were not on the equator and you were on, let's say, the 45th parallel, that centripetal force would constantly be pulling you towards the equator, and that force should be there, or you should be able to measure it. And I don't believe that force exists.
That's correct.
Which I think would
Yes,
prove that
yes,
we're not spinning.
You're talking about edge velocity, otherwise known as rim velocity, and the rim velocity would be increased towards the outside edge, i.e., 1,000 miles per hour plus at the equator of a presupposed spinning ball. Correct.
Going north would be like climbing an ever steeper mountain. Like at the north, if the Earth was spinning like that, maybe not the tippy top, but like at least at 45 degrees, it would be like you're being pulled in one direction, which to your orientation system would make you experience as if you were standing on the side of a hill constantly. Yeah.
Well,
Correct.
According
Ludicrous,
to
isn't
Rumpus
it?
and
It's absurd.
centrifugal force calculator, the force is only 0.3% of the weight of the object or the person.
Yeah, so at 100 pounds, it'd be like the size of a baseball.
Hold on.
But you would still be able to measure it.
Correct. So he's saying it's a very small amount. Well, you'd be able to measure that, wouldn't you?
Exactly.
I mean,
well,
if it was a basketball laying on a perfectly level basketball court, that basketball would go towards if it was in the northern, quote unquote, northern hemisphere, it should roll to the south wall.
Yeah, sure.
From that
hold on,
force.
you have to repeat it. We've established that. For the mathematics, we have actually covered this once before. I don't have them to hand, but Adam has indeed done the mathematics, which is why I'm agreeing with this guy. He says, will it be very, very small? Yeah, you're right, it would. But it would also be measurable, and it isn't.
Yeah.
Well, they claim that they do measure it. I mean, they say you weigh more at the North Pole or the poles
careful.
than you do at
Measure
the equator.
it. No. They draw a correlation with something called the Etvos effect.
They don't measure anything. This is
correct.
That's
Isn't
just something they throw in there.
Etvos effect? The Etvos effect is basically Coriolis, correct?
No.
Isn't it a type of Coriolis?
I'm not going to argue the Etvos effect. Far from it. I'm not going to play devil's advocate for that position.
Basically, their claim has nothing to do with the Coriolis effect. Basically, the claim is that if you're on the outside, if you're on the equator of a spinning ball, basically, to make it basic, you're on the equator of a spinning ball, then you're going to weigh a little bit less due to the forces that are making you want to fly off of it, right? Then you will north or south of that line, right? And what they do is they'll take these weighing scales and they'll weigh something at, let's just say, I don't know, 50 degrees north, and then they'll go to the equator and they'll weigh the same thing, and there'll be a very small change in the difference of the weight. But what they're not telling you, what most of them don't know because they're boneheads, is the difference on their scales has nothing to do with their claim of a rotating sphere or their claim of a Etvos effect. What it is that the air pressure at the equator is always less than everywhere else because there's more heat at the equator, there's more direct sunlight at the equator throughout a 12-month period than any other part of the world. So there has more convection. So more convection means they have more low pressure. So there's slightly less air pressure. And that's what the difference is on the scales. It has nothing to do with any other nonsense. And any of them you say that to, right, they'll tell you you're stupid, tell you to go away. Ask them, have they validated that it's not the case? And none of them can do it because it is the case. That is the facts. They're idiots.
You know what, Adam? that's the exact argument I had. I mean, in my head, this is what I thought of as the cause of that. But I didn't validate it in any way. But that's the way I thought about it.
Well, it's not on you to do it, which is what I mean, I applaud Brian. Great, you can articulate the position far better than I could have done. But I wouldn't have done anyway, and the reason is because why is it on you to give an explanation to this cause and effect claim by your opponent? So it's an effect, is it? All right. Well, we know we have this method of resolving the effect. Where's it observed in nature? What's the natural phenomena occur, etc., etc. So as soon as you hear things like Etvos effect, you go, all right, so this is science then. You've got a cause and effect relationship you've validated through hypothesis-based systematic experimentation, have you? And what they will do is throw up a load of maths.
Right.
It's not down to you to explain it. You can explain why you see a difference in a man-made device that's measuring things. Well, when they say weight, they've automatically got an assumption of gravity. Well, they lean on that when they give you their mathematical description and correlation for this occurrence that isn't a naturally occurring phenomenon to begin with, hasn't been validated through experiment, so is in no way an empirical evidence to present their claim with. But they'll still show you the chart, they'll still give you the graph and correlate it with a downward vector that's automatically assuming a gravity that they haven't in any way validated, automatically assuming an R and a spin and a value that's giving you rotational forces. They'll assume all of it.
No, what Brian said is beautiful.
I see that
it made a lot of sense
pretty
to me,
easy to.
At the same time, I would have to verify this for myself. Meaning, I would have to take the scales, do it myself, calibrate them myself, because I don't trust the competency of these people. Seeing that Nat Geo went out and attempted to debunk flat earthers by saying that the boat was disappearing because of Earth curve, the horizon, but the horizon was behind the boat. If they can do that with all of their editors and all of the intellectuals backing this model, I don't even trust the competency of them calibrating these scales. I mean, I don't know.
So basically, Elijah, never buy silver bullion at the equator. Always buy north of the equator, then you'll pay more.
Yeah, it is absurd. It's another one where, yeah, people would be a bit more concerned about it if there was massive amounts of money to be lost or won by considering it. And yeah, it's not considered in the slightest now, is it? Anyway, with that, I am going to round out this show and say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. Of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, hitting the PayPal link, joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.